I was elected November 2020, so I've been clerk for about 18 months now. That 18 months has been an absolute pleasure working with the Northville Township staff and the Board of Trustees. I worked 35 years at Chrysler Corporation. Northville Township population has grown to just under 32,000. Registered voters, we are currently at 25,660. That was about a week ago. It changes every day. And it's a daily task at the clerk's office to maintain the voter registration files. We maintain it in a statewide database. It's called QVF, and we also maintain a paper copy of that, which we call our MasterCard file. So you've got the electronic system, and if the electronic system was ever to go down, we've got paper copies of the registration for all 25,000, and plus we hold any people's who have canceled their registration. We keep them for 5 years. Additionally, voters can register and request an absentee ballot right up until the day before the election, which is part of the 2018 constitutional amendment that was passed. Absentee voting now accounts for about 80% of the votes in Northville Township. It was 76% in the November 2020 election, and in this last, we had a school board village election, and it was over 80%. In the November election, it was over 16,000 votes. The primary that we've got coming up in August, it is, we're expecting about a 50% turnout. We've ordered 18,000 ballots, and it'd be nice to even get even more than that. The absentee ballot applications are made available to residents and mailed out. We start mailing them out to the overseas and military voters. But they go out 75 days before the election date, which means it was May 18th. And yesterday we mailed 12,000 absentee ballot applications out. A resident must request an absentee ballot before they get one, and they have to request it from the clerk's office. The actual absentee ballots are made available and mailed 45 days before the election. We hope we'll know what names are going on the ballot before that date. It isn't certain that we will, and they'll probably, there's a chance that they'll even modify that 45-day date, because there are, 14 names are being challenged on the ballot because of either campaign finance violations and or signature issues with the petitions. On election integrity. Coming into the clerk's position, I didn't have that much knowledge. I mean, I had been campaign challenger, I'd been a poll worker before, but I didn't really know the nuts and bolts of how a campaign and how an election is run. I have learned a lot. I am absolutely confident that Northville Township has zero or near zero fraudulent votes. And I can't take credit for that. That's my deputy clerk and the staff in the clerk's office and the township staff. As evidence, in the November 2020 election, we had a tie vote for the 4th position on the school board. And with that, the tie vote, the way election law works is if there is a tie vote, you put 2 slips of paper in a hat. One of them says elected and one of them says not elected. And so you draw the name out of the hat, and the person who drew the not elected decided they wanted a recount. So we went and recounted, and it was the Wayne County Board of Canvassers that came in to recount, and they did it at Northville Township. We participated in that, and several of you were also there as challengers. But in that tie vote, we hand counted around 63,000 votes. There were 4 positions being elected. There were 8 people on the ballot. We had to tally up all the votes for all those 8 people for up to 4 votes per ballot. And so it turned out to be about 63,000 votes cast. And after doing that tally, guess what the vote was for that 4th position? Tie. It was still a tie. I told the person at the beginning, I said, I'll tell you what's gonna happen. is here's what the hand count's gonna show you. It'll be this number of votes, and I was reading the tape off the Dominion machine. I was reading the tape. It's gonna be this number of votes, and I can tell you what it's gonna be, you know, for this precinct. This will be the poll votes, and this is what the absentee ballot votes are gonna say. And after spending about 2 hours doing that hand count, it came out to be 100% in agreement with what the Dominion machine said. I also reviewed a lot of the chain of custody process that we go through, because when I invited her into the office, I had the bag there for that precinct, and it was all sealed, and there was numbers on the seals, and there's a record of what those seals were. Every time that bag was opened for whatever purpose, there was a record of that. So there's chain of custody, and that those votes still remain under lock and key right now. The Dominion tabulators are not connected to the internet, in spite of what you've heard. They are not connected to the internet. We pulled the tapes off the Dominion machine that tells you what the count is for every person, every position on that ballot. And then that tape, we summarize that tape, and then those results are hand carried down to Wayne County. And then Wayne County, after the Board of Canvassers reviews them, they report what the official results are. So we report the unofficial results, which is what we did. And then it isn't until it gets down to Wayne County. And there's no opportunity, it's never connected to the internet, there's no opportunity for votes to be switching out there in cyberspace.
I can look around, I can drive by the town, and I see people who are honest. Now, when you have the news in the other areas of the state, there is someone video, I mean, that's fraud. I'm not saying
I'll touch that on it in a little
yes.
bit, okay? Our votes in Northville Township, they've always been in balance. And when I say balance, what I mean is that every vote is accounted for. We had a situation in the May election where the count was off by 1. After investigating, you go, well, okay, but that's not a balance. That's not acceptable. So we investigated that and went through and we analyzed, well, where could that be coming from, and through a little investigative work. What we found was that an absentee voter had passed away at 6 a.m. on election day. And we pulled our electronic poll book at 4 p.m. the prior day, and we didn't get the report out of QVF until after we had already counted the ballots. And so that was, we were off by 1, but it's accounted for, so that still counts as imbalance.
So what's the legality of that vote? Did that vote count or not count?
Well, once the votes get counted, once the votes get taken out of the envelope, put through the tabulator, it's an anonymous vote. There's no way of retrieving that vote.
That's a very important point.
There is no way of retrieving that vote, so that vote was counted.
A lot of the discussion you hear are about things that are related to the envelope. All right, as soon, and I had this, I had this discussion, I don't know who it was with, it wasn't somebody here, and they said, well, the only thing, a fair thing to do is then throw out all the votes. No, that's not what happens. If you have one fraudulent envelope, as soon as they open it up, it's thrown in the mix and there's nothing you can do about it. You're not gonna throw out a precinct, you're not gonna throw out an A/B counting set, there's nothing you can, it's not tied because we believe in anonymous voting in this country. So it's not like they can go back and say, we know who this was.
Voting at the polls, we should definitely require a photo ID, and if a voter, quote unquote, forgets his ID, and we will have, in November 2020 election, we had 3 or 5 or something like that, that had to sign the affidavit. Now, if you don't have your ID, you can sign an affidavit that says, I've got one, but I forgot it, and that vote goes in and gets counted. Secure my vote. One of the things that does, it says that you can sign an affidavit, but then that becomes a provisional envelope ballot, and it doesn't get tabulated, and that person has 6 days to go into the clerk's office and show his ID. Again, right now, all we use, I mean, if the person is registered And so we've got his address, we've got the name, we've got the date of birth, all that information. But when we get that envelope back with that absentee ballot, the only thing that's on there is his or her, their signature. That's what we got as a signature. And I think we do a pretty darn good job matching signatures. We got a great staff. But it wouldn't hurt to have electronic matching of signatures, and then when the electronic one flags something, then we'd have a human look at it. And I think that's just a good idea, and there's proposals to do that, but it hasn't been passed, and I don't know if that's
I
on
think
that.
I think in the last four or.
Last part of the social security or driver's license?
Yeah, and then what's on there is doing that exactly. The last four of the social security, or the driver's license, or presentation of a photo ID. And you can do that, if you really feel concerned about putting your driver's license or the last four of your social security in the mail, you can come to the clerk's office and show a photo ID. Signature verification, talked about that one. AV drop boxes, they should be video monitored with high definition cameras.
Can we eliminate it?
It's a felony for any unauthorized person to be in possession of an absentee ballot or an absentee application. Only the voter can have that, or the voter can give it to a family member to bring in, or designate an individual. Voter registration, another one of my pet peeves. Voter registration is absolutely critical, and it's a daily task in the clerk's office. We got, as I said, 25,660 voters registered. We have, and if you look at the census numbers, we don't have that many adults over the age of 18. And you go, wow, how can that be different? Well, number one, the census isn't all that accurate. Number two, you get a lot of older children who are off to college, and they get voted in the census, counted in the census at their college address, but they still register at home. And then there's we make it easy peasy to register to vote. In fact, you can register to vote right up till 8 p.m. on election day now. Constitutional change. Clerks are not allowed to cancel a voter registration unless there's proof that someone has died and or a voter requested. So if you have someone move out of state, is registered in our township, moves out of state, and doesn't bother to tell the clerk's office that, hey, I moved and I'm gonna be registering in a different area, that person stays on the rolls for 4 or 6 or potentially longer. Years they stay on the rolls, and clerks can't take them off. And so we send them a nice letter saying, please send this letter to your son or daughter, and have them sign it and check a box that says they don't no longer live in Northville, sign it and send it back to us. That's a voter requesting to be taken off the rolls. And that's for federal elections, which is almost every election is a federal except for the special elections, which controls how you take people off the registration rolls. Since January 1, 2021, which is about a month or so after I got elected, we have canceled 1,151 voter registrations, and that's 35% of those were deceased. 51% were through the NVRA Act, which means that they hadn't voted for 6 years. So you got, if they don't vote in six consecutive years, then they go into an inactive list, and then you can get them canceled. The NVAR will actually cancel. And there was about 14% that were they had moved out of the state, and through the joint, working with other states, we were notified, and they came off the rolls also. So again, it's a constant task for the clerk's office to monitor the registrations and keep the registrations up to date, because if you don't do it every day, you're gonna fall behind and you're gonna be crunched at election time.
My question is, with 83 counties in the state of Michigan, with about 2,500 city townships, Do you guys get together and kind of talk about what might have happened in some of the, like, other precincts closer to Detroit? Because you seem to be pretty average. I love average with common sense. But how do we get people like you to, in your position that's elected, to help us?
I belong to AWCC.
The clerks, the Association of Clerks.
Association of Western,
Wayne County.
Wayne County.
Okay.
Yeah. So we get together quarterly, and then we share information all the time. We're also, and I'm a member of the Michigan Townships Association, and that covers the entire state, and that is an absolutely superb organization. They monitor all the laws that are being proposed, and they give you status on that. They develop consensus opinions on which law should we be supporting or not supporting from a township's perspective. And I'll say they're non-democratic or Republican. They try to take a very non-partisan position and what makes sense for the people in the communities. Now remember, a lot of these, in these 83 counties, and there's 5,300 township
53, okay.
jurisdictions, a lot of them are small jurisdictions. They got, hundreds or maybe a few thousand people, and they want to live their own life. They want to, control, make their own decisions. And so the MTA, the Michigan Township Association, is nonpartisan, and I think calls a pretty straight shot.